So now you get to the important part, analyzing student work. You want to develop or adapt a formative assessment that will allow you to assess the whole class learning. It should be an assessment that is completed by the whole class, featured in a learning segment. If you are teaching only a group within the class for the learning segment, that group will be the whole class. The formative assessment should reflect the work of individuals, not groups, but may be individual work from a group task. The assessment should provide opportunities for students to demonstrate, and these are the three important ones again: conceptual understanding, the why of the mathematics, the ideas, the big ideas in the mathematics; computational procedural fluency, again the arithmetic, the computation, working on the algorithms; and then lastly, mathematical reasoning, problem-solving skills, about the strategies and ways that kids think about working through problems. So these are three big important things. So you want to make sure that your formative assessment makes it possible for kids to do these three things. If it's a worksheet where there's all computation, you're not going to get to conceptual or reasoning parts. It's best to have something that might have some computation on it, but also you want to have some problems where there's an open problem. It asks kids to work something out and show their thinking. The best kinds of assessment for this will have kids talking through, writing about, drawing, representing their ideas and their thinking along the way, not just giving an answer at the bottom of a page. So be really careful about choosing the formative assessment that will work for you. You want to submit a blank copy of the chosen assessment, formative assessment, including directions prompts provided to the students. You want to define the evaluation criteria you will use to analyze student learning related to the mathematical understanding described above for the formative assessment. You want to collect and analyze student work from the chosen formative assessment and summarize student learning in a graphic form, either a chart or a table. That's one way to do it. Most folks will do this. This is the best way because you can organize the information to show different kids doing different things, and that's part of the analysis. Or you could do the narrative form. Maybe you're working with younger kids and a narrative form makes more sense. To identify patterns of learning within or across the learners in the class. As I've said before, patterns of learning, patterns of learning, patterns of learning. You want to not just think about individual kids, but what are some groups of kids doing? What kinds of approaches are given to one kind of problem across your kids? What patterns do you see? You may submit text files with scanned student work, or for oral assessments of primary grade students, example, counting, a video or audio file. Note that the oral assessment must be given to each student in the whole class, though not necessarily on the same day. For each focus student, a video or audio work sample must be no more than 5 minutes in total running time. Then you want to select and submit 3 work samples that demonstrate an area of struggle identified in your analysis and analyze the errors or misconceptions related to the struggle. This is a big deal. This sets up your re-engagement lesson. You want to choose something that you can make a good lesson around that will move kids to better understanding. Don't choose something that's something simple like they forgot to carry or something like that. You need to get something that's a little bit richer than that. It could be about regrouping. It could be something to do with multiplication, arrays, and just some kind of rich thing that the kids are struggling with a bit that you can do some work around. Now the re-engagement part, re-engaging students in learning mathematics. So now that you've identified an area of struggle, you want to set out a targeted learning objective goal related to that struggle. Identify a targeted learning objective goal based on the analysis of student work samples. So whatever you're going to be doing for the re-engagement lesson has to come from what you've shown to be a struggle within the student's work. You want to design a re-engagement lesson based on the targeted learning objective goal. You want to teach the re-engagement lesson. So the lesson may be planned to teach the 3 focus students during one-on-one, small group, or whole class implementation. So important here, it doesn't have to be whole class. It doesn't have to be the 3 focus students together. They could be one by one, or small group, or whole class. You have choices here. You want to collect and submit the 3 focus students' work samples from the re-engagement lesson that provide new evidence You want to collect and submit the 3 focus students' work samples from the re-engagement lesson that provide new evidence of student mathematical understandings, the formative assessment. You may submit text files with scanned student work, or for oral assessments of primary grade students, example being counting, a video or audio file. Note that the oral assessment must be given to each student participating in the class re-engagement lesson, though not necessarily on the same day. So you could space it out over time if you need to. For each focus student, a video or audio work sample must be no more than 5 minutes in total running time. Lastly, you need to evaluate the effectiveness of the re-engagement lesson and consider its impact on student learning. This part is very much one of the rubrics. It's all about effectiveness, and you have to say and show what students did to get better at whatever you were trying to teach them, or what places they may still struggle. Now there's a lot of pieces to this one. Let's make this so we can see it. So this is for task 4. What you need to do is student mathematics work samples. So this is the initial work that they do, the one that you're going to use to figure out what the re-engagement lesson should be. You can see the forms that it might take. Okay, so written form, audio form, video form. Okay, no page limit, but then there's limits to the video and audio. And then some descriptors about what can and cannot be on those forms. And then for part F, examples of student work from the re-engagement lesson. So this is after you've taught them, whatever you were doing with them in the re-engagement lesson, they did some work. Again, written work samples, audio work samples, and video work samples. Restrictions here, none for writing, but 5 minutes for audio or video, and some descriptors of what's acceptable. And lastly, this is the mathematics assessment commentary, and no more than 8 pages in length. Let's go back up to the top. This is the short version. This is what you need to do for this assessment task. First one is you need to select one class as the focus for this assessment. You need to do the provide relevant context information, and that's the mathematics context for learning information form. You want to identify a learning segment of 3 to 5 consecutive math lessons. Identify a central focus. The central focus should support students to develop conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and mathematical problem-solving skills. Again, these 3 are the big deal of this task. Develop or adapt a formative assessment from the learning segment that will allow you to assess whole class learning. The assessment should provide opportunities for students to demonstrate conceptual understanding, computational procedural fluency, and mathematical reasoning problem-solving skills. Submit a blank copy of the assessment used to evaluate student performance. Define and submit the evaluation criteria you will use to analyze student learning. Then you want to summarize the class performance on the formative assessment completed during the learning segment. You need to analyze 3 focus students' work samples to identify the targeted learning objective goal for the re-engagement lesson. This is all about setting up what the re-engagement lesson should be about by looking at students' work beforehand. Then based on that, you want to write a re-engagement lesson that develops student understanding of the targeted learning objective goal, which you identified by looking at the students' work beforehand. Implement the lesson with the 3 focus students individually, in a small group, or with a whole class. Collect and submit the work samples for the re-engagement lesson for the 3 focus students. And finally, evaluate the effectiveness of the re-engagement lesson. Again, effectiveness is a big deal, all about reflection. So, this was an overview of Mathematics Assessment Task 4. I do hope that it's been helpful to you. There are other videos I have on other things that will help you do well by the edTPA.